Good evening, Terry.
Good evening.
Question 1, and you will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer. Explain your position on the involvement of artesian water and other possible providers within Cecil County. I'll repeat that if you'd like. Explain your position on the involvement of artesian water and other possible providers within Cecil County.
A number of years ago, the Cecil County Commissioners were looking at their wastewater treatment facility plans. And as many of you know, that as many of these private systems have failed, the state has required the county to take them over. And so the state over the years has had a number of wastewater facility plans and has basically operated them and run them with our tax dollars. As the commissioners, from my understanding, were looking down the road at what those wastewater facility treatment plants were doing, they realized that they were aging. And with that, between that fact and the fact that the Maryland Department of the Environment is putting more and more requirements in terms of excess or discharge into the bay, the commissioners, as my understanding, made a decision that those facilities would be better sold to another organization or a business that did that for a living. And then they entered an RFP proposal process and received, I believe, 2 proposals. And they eventually ended up going with artesian. At this point in time, though, unfortunately, it is in a court of law, and there will be a judge that will be making a decision on that within the next year. The issue has to be with, or the issue having to be with the county selling assets the county has that are currently in operation. And so the judge will be making a decision on that. I support artesian having those facilities. I think that they are a business that are in the wastewater management business, and generally business is much more efficient than government is in terms of operation and looking down the road. I think it was a wise decision on the part of the commissioners to move forward in that direction. And when that is completed, when those issues are completed and that the decision on the lawsuit is rendered by the judge, then the county will be able to move forward in implementing infrastructure in our growth corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Terry, please provide insight into your position on raising taxes versus spending cuts and your perspective on the steady growth of government, including the level to which you believe government should solve societal problems versus promoting and enabling of private solutions. That was a lot, so I will repeat it. Please provide insight into your position on raising taxes versus spending cuts and your perspective on the steady growth of government, including the level to which you believe government should solve societal problems versus promoting and enabling of private solutions.
I'm going to need more than 2.5 minutes on that one, I think. No one likes paying property taxes, and I'm certainly high in that category. And being a fiscal conservative, I believe very strongly that we know better how to spend our money than government does. As we look forward to the next couple of years especially, we all know that the economy has been in a very difficult position. At our federal level, we are seeing some dramatic changes that are going to impact us on the local level. On the state level, we are also seeing the state of Maryland trying to balance their budget and having difficulty with the structural deficit. The past few years have been very, very difficult for all of us. Many of you in here are probably unemployed or have received a reduction in force or perhaps even a reduction in your pay. So as we look forward, the county commissioners have some significant responsibilities that they must do. This past year, the county commissioners, for the first time in more than 30 years, did not pass a property tax increase, which is significant. And as we look forward in the next 4 years, as I've done my homework in terms of understanding what the issues are that are going to affect local government, one of the main issues I see coming down the road is that the state is going to ask counties to pick up their portion of the state teachers' retirements as well. As I talked to Craig Whiteford, the county budget director, he said that that was an estimated $12 to $17 million additional expense to county government every year. So as we're looking, there are some things we don't know about our future. We don't know what's going to happen on the federal level, the state level. There are some indicators of tax burden that's going to be passed down to the local level. So it is imperative that the county commissioners continue to look for ways to completely eliminate wasteful spending. In addition to that, they need to be looking for ways that they can increase the revenue without putting that additional burden on us. Some ideas that I have for that are that we should make sure that our economic development is in a position of going out there and getting businesses that will come to our community. Those businesses will ease that tax burden on us and will bring jobs to our communities as well. This is absolutely critical. And to do that, we need to have the infrastructure in place to attract them. Those are part of my solutions for many challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 3. Other than increasing property tax yields, how do you propose to increase revenue in response to rising service demand and unfunded mandates from Annapolis and Washington? I'll repeat the question. Other than increasing property tax yields, how do you propose to increase revenue in response to rising service demands and unfunded mandates from Annapolis and Washington?
As I stated in my answer to the last question, these are some extremely difficult challenges. But I will also tell you that I'm not discouraged by these challenges, and I gave you a little bit of an insight into what I believe is part of the answer in taking the load off of our property taxpayers as individuals. And that's increasing the opportunities for businesses to come to Cecil County, which will increase jobs and provide additional tax revenue in terms of commercial and industrial development. The reason I say that I'm not discouraged by this is when we go through these very difficult times is when people tend to think outside the box. And they tend to think of solutions that haven't otherwise been thought of before. And I see this as a very positive thing for Cecil County as we move forward. The other part of the question, I believe, had to do with the role of government in social issues. And clearly there are things that local government are required to do by the state. They're required to provide public safety. They're required to provide funds for the health department. They're required to do roads, sewer, trash, those kinds of things. But as we're looking at the future, I think it's important we put leaders in place that will enable our community to take ownership of some of those issues. And so we're not relying on government to take care of that. The more we rely on government to take care of that, the higher our taxes will be, and I think that we all understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 4. How do you think the growth corridor should be developed, and what is your proposal to protect the rural areas of the county? I'm going to start from scratch. How do you think the growth corridor should be developed, and what is your proposal to protect the rural areas of the county from overdevelopment of residential units, and your view of the concept of imposing some type of fee on residential developers to help offset infrastructure costs such as roads, schools, etc. I'll repeat. How do you think the growth corridor should be developed, and what is your proposal to protect the rural areas of the county from overdevelopment of residential units, and your view on the concept of imposing some type of fee on residential developers to help offset infrastructure costs such as roads, schools, etc.
I think every one of us in this room are aware of the amazing and wonderful quality of life we have here in Cecil County. We're also very aware of the growth that has occurred in the last, prior to a couple of years ago, to the prior 10 years, where we had growth not in our growth corridor, but actually in our rural areas and using up our farmland and really destroying that rural quality of life that we so enjoy. The other part of this is that our growth corridor is the comprehensive plan that was recently passed by the county commissioners creates a blueprint for development for the future. It has defined what the growth corridor is, and as we look forward, we need to be looking for incentives to have developers develop in the growth corridor where we want it, and not in our rural areas where we don't. And how that takes place, I think there's a number of different options out there. One idea I have is I would like us as a community to define what we want our development to look like. Do we want mixed-use development? Do we want shopping centers next to apartments or next to homes, single-family or multifamily dwellings? I think we as a community should decide that and not let the developers decide that for us. That would be one of my ideas of putting together a task force that would take a look at how we do that.
Is it working there?
In the past, the rural areas have taken they've had the burden of supporting the development pressures that we have felt. But I believe that if we have incentives to put development in the growth corridor that we have not had before, and we have the infrastructure to support that development, that we will be successful in putting growth where we want it and not where we don't.
Part is lot.
The third part of this question was, how do you feel about imposing, my thoughts about imposing a fee on developers? There is a taxing possibility out there called impact fees or excise taxes. Currently, the county commissioners do not have impact fees as part of their toolbox. That's something that has to be approved in Annapolis, and I would support researching that and looking into that to see if that would be an option for our communities in the future.
Question 5. Despite the best efforts of Office of Economic Development, little economic development seems to be occurring here, and minimum wage jobs need to be augmented with meaningful, better paying jobs. How do you propose that Cecil County Board employees, employers, should require a higher education level or proactive training, resulting in a base of better paying jobs than those now prevalent in the county?
Several months ago, the county's Department of Economic Development presented to the Economic Development Commission, as well as out in the community, a look over the past 3 to 4 years in terms of what was happening in terms of job growth. And while Cecil County did lose a number of businesses, the number of new businesses that came in more than replaced in terms of the number of jobs in Cecil County. I found that a very interesting statistic because I think that's something that most of us are not aware of. So while Cecil County perhaps was not as impacted as much as other communities are, we still have a challenge here. We still have an unemployment rate that is simply not acceptable, and we need to do something about it. And part of that answer, I believe, is that we need to put incentives in place to attract businesses to Cecil County. Now, there are a number of ways that you can do that, and I've spoken with our Economic Development Director, Vernon Thompson, about what incentives out there exist currently. And the state does have incentive programs. The county has very little flexibility that they can do. However, what Mr. Thompson shared with me is that they work very strongly with the state to use whatever incentives that they can. But as we look at the future, there are some things that we do know. We are going to receive, this region will be having an additional 8,000 jobs that are in the process of relocating from Fort Monmouth, New Jersey to Aberdeen Proving Ground. And they say that with the ripple effect, in the next 5 to 10 or even 20 years out there, that the ripple effect will create possibly 30,000 new positions overall with the demands that people have for not just the technology positions, but also for restaurants, for shopping, and for things like that come to a community. And all this is very good news. What we need to also remember is that an educated workforce is what is going to be part of bringing those jobs and those businesses to Cecil County. So it's very important that we make sure that we have the training in place and that we raise the bar of expectations for our students so that they will be available and have an opportunity to have those jobs.
Okay, thank you, Terry. That was our final question for the district section. And at this point, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I told you you get bathroom breaks. And close to 50 years old and diabetic, I appreciate the bathroom. In 5 minutes sharp, we will be starting back again. We will give you a 1-minute warning before we start again so that you can find your seats. Thank you.